Now I'm kind of skeptical. I don't know if this entire chord progression will work, but let's see. Hey guys, I hope you're well. It's been a while since I've last posted a YouTube video because in the meantime I've been working on a new production suite called Roya, Deep Textural Organic. And for those of you who don't know, I've also put out a free starter pack. And today's video is going to be me using that free starter pack or sounds from that starter pack to create an organic house track from scratch. So let's dive in. I have just one audio track set up here, but I would like to start with a MIDI track. So Command-Shift-T to create a MIDI track. And in that MIDI track, we are going to load up a one-shot. Freebies, Roya starter pack, one-shot, kick. Let's go for this progressive organic kick, which I've labeled as my favorite kick from the pack. And I'm going to highlight this entire section, hit Command-Shift-M to create a MIDI clip, right-click, 4x4. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to create a 4x4 groove here, loop this. And now we're at a 123 BPM, so if we hit play, our kick will start playing. I'm just going to dial it down a bit, and now what I'm going to do is add another MIDI track, and in that MIDI track I will load up a hi-hat. Now I like this hi-hat here because it has a bit of a retro vinyl noise at the end, and it also sounds very much like a shaker, and you can see that in the waveform here. It has a bit of a slope to it. A bit of an attack. So we're going to highlight this entire section again. Command-Shift-M. Make sure that we're in 8th note mode. And therefore we're just going to click here, go into 8th note. Alternatively, you can right click and go into 8th note. So the hi-hat in organic house or house in general plays on every second 8th note. C3 is the original pitch. So every second 8th note we draw on a hi-hat. And you can also place your hi-hats slightly off the grid, and I'm speaking of like milliseconds, you know, so you get a bit more rhythmic irregularity. You highlight this entire section, hit Command-L to loop it up. Now to ensure that the noise doesn't cut off whenever the sample ends or the MIDI note ends, what I will do is make sure that it plays in one-shot mode. In classic mode, you get controls over the classic curves like ADSR. I usually crank down the sustain and mess with the decay. But if I want the entire sample to play through with that white noise tail, you can just keep the curves at the default value. Could also fade it out here. Yeah, that's okay. What I'm going to do now is create another MIDI track. Highlight this, Command-Shift-M to create a MIDI clip. Now comes the clap. The clap plays on every second 4th note or every second kick. So what we're going to do is go into 4th. What we're going to do is place our clap on every second 4th note. And it's enough if we just draw in 2 and loop these. Now we just need a sample, so we're going to hit Shift and Tab. Select the nice clap sound. Put it here to where it says drop instrument here. And I like this one because it has a slight bit of a tone to it. And you can also emphasize that tone using the EQ here. There it is at approximately 1 kilohertz. And if you don't like it, you could also EQ it out. Sounds more of like your standard clap, but with the tone, I kind of like it. Gives it a bit more of a piercy quality. You can dial down the clap a bit. Yeah, I usually don't like it when my claps are too loud and in your face. Click your instrument or the sampler and hit Command-G to group it. Then you can open up your chain selector here, show hide the chain list, and you can start dragging in different clap samples here. You see this one has more of a 909-ish character and has a few percussions here. If you don't want those percussions, you just take them out. I really love these 909 based clap sounds because they emphasize the high-end frequencies a lot more. This one's more like short and snappy. This one's like a really wide, high frequency type clap. Yeah, and you can layer as many claps as you like. You can also set the levels here. So this one has more of a body to it, this wood clap. but I don't like it, so I'm going to delete it. And if you'd like, you could also start pitching individual claps. So if you want to pitch just the third clap, for example, you can go into controls, transpose it up a bit. And if you want, you could also make just this layer very snappy. But I feel like I can't hear it when I do that. Yeah, so I'm just going to take it out. I feel like I'm getting quite the full sound with just these two claps, so that's absolutely fine. And once I have the claps and the hi-hats, the chord drums alongside the kick, I usually group those, Command G, and I call them core drums. These guys, they don't add a lot of detail, but they define how the core drums groove sounds. That classic house groove. Once you have that, you can create a new MIDI track. And by the way, if you click on a group and hit Command-Shift-T, it creates a MIDI track beneath that group. But if you click on one of the tracks within the group, it'll obviously create that track within the group. So just like a little workflow tip, just click the group here, Command-Shift-T, and it'll create that MIDI track right underneath the group. After I create that chord drums groove, I just start with the percussion groove. What I'll do for that is go into drums, drum rack, just double click to load that in. Now you can load individual percussion one-shots into your drum rack. So what I'm going to do is just look for a couple percussion one-shots, and in Roya, I've decided to go for organic and synthetic percussion one-shots. So let's take a classic conga hit over here, maybe a bonga as well. Bongo, bonga, and a couple synthetic percussion as well, because that always sounds quite interesting. Maybe something weird like this. Just listen to what you feel like sounds good to you and put them into a drum rack. Any sound that sounds somewhat interesting. And what you can do is dial it down a bit so it doesn't sound too dominant from the start. Same procedure. You highlight, you hit Command-Shift-M to create that MIDI clip. You right click, and for percussion I find 8th note and 16th note mode to be perfect, or 16th grid. And you zoom in, you play the entire groove as a whole, and you try to come up with a percussion phrase that sounds hummable, that sounds like you can sing to it. And if you'd like, you could also play this with a MIDI keyboard, so you could record arm this track and start jamming with your keyboard if you have one, or you're able to push or whatever. But in this case, we're going to keep it really simple and easy to follow. So what I will do is just draw in a couple notes that sound hummable, like a A-B type of phrase, a type of call and response. That's always what I'm looking for when I draw in these percussion lines. It's always good to start with those organic percussions like the conga and bonga, conga and bongo. Yeah. And you see these cut off quite suddenly, and that's because it's in classic mode. We can change that anytime. Just go Shift and Tab. Alternatively, you could just click here. And we're going to change all of these to one shot. So again, these one shots play from beginning to end. Yeah, there we go. So let's zoom in a bit. Let's go like this. Maybe places here. That's better. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So this is kind of like our A phrase. Bum, ba-da, boo. And if you command and you drag down these individual sounds, you can change the velocity here. You see that? And now we go for a phrase B over here. I feel like that could hit a bit earlier. Or maybe change the start position of the sound. Maybe put it here so it starts right at the end. Yeah, kind of like a little reverb throw there. Why not? That could work. And if you want to have a bit more complexity to your groove, what you would do is just add in a few more percussions and see if that suits your vibe. Yeah, I'm just going to go for this. Keep it simple. And I'll just take that 2-bar phrase here and hit Command L to loop it up. And you see that entire MIDI clip then starts to loop. And by the way, these little snippets here, these little cuts in the MIDI indicate that it's looped at that particular spot. You can see this is looped every 1 bar, and you can see this one is looped every 2 bars, indicated by these little tiny snippets here. You see? It's a bit more recognizable now. When I have the chord drums, when I have the percussion ready, that's usually where I start dragging in those top loops to make the groove sound a lot fuller. What I usually love to do is go for the top loops here. And you can see this one's very shaker dominant. So what I could do before going into the top loops is maybe choose a shaker. Just drag and drop, and it automatically creates an audio track. Dial that down. Already sounds like a full groove, you know? Maybe dial down the percussion a lot more. And what you could do is, if you don't like how the percussion plays, like you don't like that it repeats so much, you can highlight an entire 2-bar phrase or 4-bar phrase, depending on how much you'd like to edit. But in this case, I'm going to go for 2 bars. And I'm going to hit Command J to consolidate it. So you see this is now its own little clip. And I'm going to give it a red color. Double click. That reverb throw, I don't like that it plays so often, so I'm going to delete the second one. You see, it gives it a bit more variety. And what you could do is just then loop this entire section and drag it out. Now that plays throughout the end. Nice. And at this point, I just layer some sounds. Sounds that I feel like sound good on their own. I just drag them in to see how they sound with the entire groove. Nice. And sometimes if I have 2 layers of shakers, I pan one to the left and one to the right. However, I don't know if this one's going to sound nice on the right because it contains a lot of claps, hi-hats, and percussion, but we can test it out. Why not? Or if we don't want to give it a static position on the right, what we could do is center it again, go into audio effects, auto pan perhaps. And honestly, I don't do this for top loops as much, but it's just an inspiration that I got right now. So auto pan, maybe decrease the rate, not so much amount because we want to keep it rather subtle. Just starts moving in the stereo field a bit. Why not? And at this point, I just dial in the kick. Yeah, and this is already sounding like a solid groove, you know? And everything that you add from here on now is rather complementary because you've established the full groove using the core drums alongside the kick. Then you have that percussion phrase that gives it a bit more catchiness, and using the shakers or the top loops, you make it sound full. So you don't rely on having a top loop to start your track, but you rely on having your own little process of what hi-hat sounds good, what clap sounds good. Let's layer this a bit more. Maybe let's give a bit more detail to the percussion phrase before jumping right into just loop, loop, loop. I feel like this gives it a bit more love. You give your groove a bit more love this way. And when it comes to percussion, something that I really love to do is just drag in a loop that sounds good on its own, dial it down. And I feel like, for example, this loop alone, it takes away the original call and response feeling from the percussion. So what I can do is just listen to specific parts that fill in the groove, the in-between. So maybe it's not the entire part that I would like to play, but just individual hits. And using Command 1, we decrease the grid size. Using Command 2, we increase it. Command 1, Command E to chop out, for example, just this hit. Maybe I like this as a clap layer, wow. And Command X to chop out the other sounds and use this as a clap. Or as a percussion. Yeah, I feel like this works more as a percussion though. And we can hit Option to drag that one shot and copy it over, and Option Shift to scroll through the sound to maybe find other potential one shots that fill in the groove. Oh, I like this one. Subtle little tom there. Yes, I love that. I love those tiny little details. And then you can do that over and over for as many grooves as you like. Now I'm going to take this 1-bar phrase and hit Command J to consolidate it, or to create one entire clip from that. And then you can copy and paste it as many times as you'd like. Perhaps you can consolidate this clip again to make it even larger. And there you go. Feel free to have fun. I've included a couple filler sounds in the starter pack as well. So at the end of every 8 or 16 bars, you can take one of these fillers and just chuck them in there. Yeah. Yeah, this one could work. Just chuck it in here maybe. Dial it down in its volume just to give the groove a bit more love and detail, you know? Double click, pitch it up a bit. Ah, wrong warp mode, beats. One shot. Yeah, even that could work. Oh yeah, that's the perfect placement. And you do this process, you repeat it as many times as you like until you feel like the groove sounds full and detailed to you. I'm gonna just highlight all of these, Command G, and to group these into tops. I'll call them tops. For the sake of keeping it clean, I'm gonna right click, assign track color to grouped clips. And this is how it then looks like. And underneath all this, I'm gonna create another MIDI track. Go for a tom groove, just one subby little tom layer. Maybe go for like a 2-bar MIDI clip this time. Command Shift M and place the toms accordingly. Oh, play that with the entire groove. Oh, I like that. Maybe another one here with a bit less velocity. Yeah. Sounds like an off kick, you know, like the secondary kick groove, but with a tom. Yeah, and then go. Dun, dun, ba-da. Nice, nice. I love that. In addition to having a tom groove using one-shots, you can also use loops, and I've also included a ton of loops here. You go into tom grooves, and you can add these on top. Open the audio file up and see that it doesn't overlap with your main tom here. So you can add a secondary tom groove. I like the way this plays together with the percussion. You notice how it kind of emphasizes the percussion? There's a bongo conga. This sample emphasizes the same conga and bongo notes. That is always a very nice fit. If you have a call and response percussion and you layer a tom on top, you see these two guys over here, the bongo and conga, that's emphasized by the tom. That gives it a bit more weight. Yeah. I'm gonna take these away. Yeah, and that's all I really need. Take this, Command J. I could, if I want to, also add another tom here to emphasize this drum fill. So what I could do is just chop this section out maybe and take this. Kind of creates a bit more variety in the sound. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we take that, we duplicate it over. And we group these, call them bass. Keep them all the same color. And in that group, you can add further bass layers like subgrooves. This one was created, I think, with the hip hop sub bass preset in Ableton Live. Could work, but I don't feel the vibe with that one. Before I create subgrooves, I honestly usually go for some type of tonal pad or anything that contains some kind of emotion to it. And the best way I do so is by using ambient pads. So you see I have also included a couple of these here. Angel's Presence. And you can take these floor-like ambient pad sounds, drag them in, reduce the volume. And if you feel like it has too much weight in the low end, you just low cut it. Now, I feel like this is always more of like an intro vibe. You double click that pad, and if you feel like it's too consistent, like too lame, you go for a different grid size and you loop just 2 or 3 of these eighth notes, or 4. Yeah, sounds good. Could also take a different phrase here by dragging that loop. And what I always love to do with pads is pitch them down. Oh, that's it. That's it. Now, however, I have now changed the original pitch from D to 6 halftone steps below the D. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, meaning that we are now at a G sharp. So G sharp minor is the key that we're working with. So as of now, I will have to select sounds in the key of G sharp minor. For example, textural synth loop, if I want to use this one, it's in G minor. I could drag it in, but in order for it to work, I would have to pitch it up 1 halftone step to make it fit to the key of G sharp minor. So let's do that here. Dial it down. There we go, son. And again, if it has too much weight in the low end, you could take out the lows. If it has too much presence and it's too upfront, you could take away the high end. And if you want, you could always take just a particular loop, like this little section over here, and hit Command L. So it becomes more of your own little loop that you've created using multiple samples. I've also included a ton of one-shots here. Oh, look at this. This one is actually in G sharp minor, so I can just use it without changing the pitch. So let's put it here. Maybe as a kind of response to this, we could add something here. So let's take this one like a lone chord, G minor, pitch it up 1 halftone step, so it matches the key of our track. Nice. And what I also love doing is taking chord progressions, and I've included a couple of them here as well. Roya. This one's called Roya. Drag and drop it, pitch it up 1 halftone step to match the key of our track. Dial it down a bit. Now I'm kind of skeptical. I don't know if this entire chord progression will work, but let's see. Beautiful, beautiful. However, we don't need to use the entire chord progression as it is here. We can take just little snippets, Command E to chop the sound, and place these little one-shots along the entire 8-bar loop that we have here. And to make it sound even more full, we could add it to our sends, and on send A, B, C, D, E, F, I have a feedback delay. You know, so we give it a bit more space, and we give it some black hole reverb, which is on this send over here. Perhaps I might narrow down the frequency range a bit to pull it more into the background. Isn't that just a vibe? Absolute vibe of a track. Oh man, I'm enjoying this track. Yeah, you just keep on moving. There's a lot of resources in this pack to fill out the detail. Yeah, you just add sounds like textures, outdoor life. Or, I don't know, ocean waves. Depending on what you want to incorporate in your track. You can add textural one-shots. Like this type of stuff into the background and make it barely audible. Yeah, you could add stuff like this. You know how this type of stuff, this organic sounds, I love them. It's like you barely even hear them, but they're there. Also, I've added a couple of transitions or more of these organic little textures, which is why I've also named the pack Deep Textural Organic. Sounds that you could really pull way down into the mix. Just give it some background life. So you could group all this, call it like effects or something like that. Effects, the same color. And then vocals, you can put a couple quotes.
Dreams bloom.
Yeah. These are also quite fun. You can drag this a bit using Shift and drag the end of the sample to stretch it out even further. Double click, change the warp mode to texture.
Dreams bloom like celestial gardens.
Interesting.
Every breath is filled with shimmering light.
And some one-shots as well.
I miss you.
I don't feel that one so much right now, but just so you know that they're included as well.
Dreams bloom like
Awesome.
celestial gardens, where every breath is filled with shimmering light.
There you go. Yeah, I'm gonna stop the video at this point or it will get way too long and I'm getting a bit hungry. Yeah, if you enjoyed the sounds from this video, feel free to grab the Roya starter pack. I'm gonna release the full Roya Deep Textural Organic Production Suite in the following 1 or 2 weeks, so stay tuned for that as well. Enjoy. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.